In the spirit of Midsommar festivities, which are actually going to be happening on the weekend that this video drops, we're going to be making a Swedish classic called smorgastarta. We're going to be going over the history, talk about some peppercorn science, and of course, I'm going to show you all how to make it at home. Smorgas means sandwich, and torta typically refers to a layered cake, which makes this guy a sandwich cake. It makes a whole lot more sense when you cut into it and see the layers of savory goodies sandwiched between the slices of bread. According to Swedish food historian Richard Tellström, the actual word smorgastarta was not put into print until 1951 in the classic Swedish book Var Kokbok. In that early rendition, only 2 layers of bread were used to sandwich one savory filling. You can actually use deli meats for the filling, although seafood is more typical, and many folks like to use pickled herring, though fancier cakes usually are made with less pungent options like smoked salmon and fresh seafood. Nowadays, you can find more complicated versions incorporating several different layers and ingredients. For my own sanity, we're going to be sticking to a simple 3-filling construction, and for that, let's first head to Costco. I picked up a package of smoked salmon, I chose the wild one for a better color, some cream cheese, and a bag of frozen pink shrimp. I grabbed a loaf of bread from one of my favorite Chinese bakeries, Shenki in Cupertino, and stopped by an old friend of the show, Cupertino Market, for some radishes, cucumbers, and dill. That's it for shopping, so let's head home and get started. Take out a few blocks of cream cheese and set it on the counter to warm up to room temperature. Take your eggs, give them a good chop. I used an egg slicer for this, but a knife works great too. Mix it up with some salt, mayo, chives, and white pepper. You might be wondering what white pepper is. Well, it actually is the same as a black peppercorn, but without the outer flesh of the peppercorn fruit. The characteristic peppery spiciness primarily comes from an alkaloid compound called piperine. Piperine activates the human TRP vanilloid subtype 1, or TRPV1 receptor for short, which produces the sensation of heat. The receptor is actually the same one that gets tripped by capsaicin and chili peppers. This article found that piperine is actually even more efficacious than capsaicin at receptor activation as well as desensitization, at least in recombinant human TRPV1 receptors. So that means it might actually be more efficient to train yourself to eat spicier food by torturing yourself with peppercorns rather than chilies. But back to white pepper. The pulp is actually removed from the fresh peppercorns by soaking it in water and fermenting it for a bit. This results in a mostly colorless peppercorn that is less spicy, but with a decidedly funky aroma. The overall flavor is a bit earthier and less fruity than black pepper, which tends to work well in dishes with a more mild flavor profile. In addition, the color or lack thereof is perfect for dishes where you might not want to see specks of pepper. I got these guys, like all my other spices, from my friendly neighborhood Indian grocery store. What was I doing again? Oh right, egg salad. Take your chopped up eggs, mix it with the salt, mayo, chives, and white pepper. Mix it up and adjust the seasonings to taste. For the frosting, just mix up blocks of cream cheese into a smooth paste and whip it up a bit. Feel free to add in a bit of mayo or buttermilk or cream to loosen it up a bit. Give it a taste, and depending on what brand, you might want to adjust it with a bit of salt or white pepper. Set that aside and start working on the other fillings. For the shrimp layer, I defrosted and mixed up the pink shrimp with some of our pre-whipped cream cheese, chives, salt, and grated horseradish. The smoked salmon got chopped up and dressed with some white pepper, dill, and more cream cheese. Be sure to leave a good amount of the cream cheese behind so you can frost the outside of the smorgastorta. For the bread, I just sliced off the edges and cut a few pieces in half to fit my plate. I layered these guys by starting with the stiffest mix first so that the cake doesn't just smush out, which in my case is going to be the smoked salmon. It's going to look like a lot, but don't worry, it'll even out, and besides, I'd rather have too much filling than not enough. Next up is another bread layer, our shrimp mix, followed by another layer of bread, egg salad, and finally, a final layer of bread on top. Make sure the filling is spread edge to edge, nice and even, and you're ready to start frosting. I just smeared the frosting on in no particular fashion, just making sure to not let too much of the filling show through, though I will be covering it up with toppings later on. Once everything is more or less covered, you can stick it in the fridge. To protect the frosting from funky fridge flavors, I like to break a couple skewers to make basically a tent around the cake with plastic wrap, which also protects the frosting from condensation. Just let it sit overnight, which is just enough time to do something fun, like subscribing to this channel. Alright, it's the next day, which means we're ready to do the fun part, decorating the cake. I start off by slicing my cucumbers and radish with a mandolin slicer to about 1 to 2 millimeter thickness. I slice the cucumber first to make it fit better on the sides of my cake, but cut it however you like. Just a side note, I consider this mandolin slicer to be the single most dangerous thing in my kitchen, so I'm always careful to use the guard to protect my fingers. Feel free to just use a knife or a vegetable peeler if you don't have one. These look good, so you can go ahead and prep some of your other ingredients. I'm using quail eggs for this guy, which I'm just gonna slice in half. Decorations are really a personal thing, so do what you like. You can go full 1950s presentation or do a more modern take. I'm not exactly the most delicate person, so I'm just gonna go for a more organic approach. I first layer down a border using the thinly sliced cucumber. I top off the cake with a layer of smoked salmon, followed by the dill, the radishes, and the rest of our ingredients. And I scattered around the quail eggs, pink shrimp, and chives in no particular order, and added on some more cucumber slices on top. I had a little jar of whitefish roe in the fridge, so I dropped on a few dollops and topped it off with cilantro flowers that I had growing in the backyard. I decorated the base with some more cucumber and the rest of the herbs. In keeping with the midsummer tradition, I put out some freshly picked strawberries and I harvested some new potatoes from the backyard. If you were thinking about eating those potato greens, definitely don't do that. You can watch my Jingle Hots video to find out why. These little guys were simply prepared with a gentle boil until tender and tossing them with some salt, chives, dill, white pepper, and warm ghee or clarified butter. We took everything out to the backyard to enjoy some of the evening air. It was kinda hard to cut it because of the toppings, but we managed. The smorgastarta was actually really good. Each of the layers had its own thing going on and the vegetables helped to keep it nice and fresh. It makes a great party food since you can get most of the work done at least a day in advance. There is a lot of cream cheese and mayo in this with soft white bread, so the texture can get a bit monotonous, so I'd suggest eating it with other dishes to get the full experience. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It was a whole lot of fun to make. I really like making the dishes that you guys suggest, so please let me know in the comment section below what you'd like to see me try next. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.
This is really beautiful and delicious at the same time. So it turned out to be an owl. It really was going woo, woohoo. This is really delicious.